I highly recommend all of these, but also this one. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be talking about my best and worst books of the year. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is the best book you've read this year. Add to my TBR. Clearly, it needs it. Alright, so same as before with my surprises and disappointments, we're going to start off with the worst books because those are a shame, and I'd much rather end on a positive note, particularly talking about my best books of the year. At the top, let's talk about the fact that technically these books are ranked. I went through and ranked them based on what my claw pile breakdown came out to. Most of these revolve around 2.5 to 2 star, which usually I say means that the book just isn't for me. I can understand how other people would really enjoy it. It and I did not get along. So on that note also, please don't take this as an insult if you love these books. Taste is subjective. I have some favorite books that I know for a fact aren't perfect, but they work perfectly for me. Please be aware of that. Starting at the top, Starling House by 𝗖cie RH/, which hurts greatly because 𝗖cie RH is an author who I have many of their books on my TBR. This was the newest one, and I decided to finally give it a shot, especially when my Spookopoly board told me, hey, you're gonna read the newest book you buy. And that was this. But unfortunately, my biggest issue with this book is that it feels like so much of the plot develops because of characters simply not communicating. And I don't like that. I particularly don't like that when our main character has nobody else in her life except for her little brother. And for some reason, even though her brother is aware of the dire circumstances they're currently living in, the two of them are constantly lying and keeping things from each other. Something that personally I cannot relate to when it comes to my brother. So that really drove me up a wall. On top of it, the romance in this. It did not feel authentic. It seemed like both of these characters found one person who was actually sort of nice to them, and they interpreted that as romantic interest and just ran with it. But that doesn't equal chemistry, so I wasn't really sold on it. The vibes in this book, absolutely phenomenal, I will acknowledge it. The house, very cool. Plot setup, a little interesting, but not my favorite. This one was such a shame, especially because the cover is very, very pretty. I really like this book. That is why it's still on my shelves, but unfortunately, this was not for me. Thankfully, this is also the only book that I own out of this list. Next up, I have to talk about The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. I did do a bit of a rant in my disappointments video, so I'll put a link to that in the cards. This was just such a letdown because I love Greek retellings, and I particularly love Greek retellings where the women are the focus. 9 times out of 10, they don't get a lot of attention in the original stories. I'm gonna need a drink. They're pushed to the wayside. Their trauma is often ignored. And I thought the idea of this book focusing on the women of the Trojan War in particular, fantastic. Actually gives the chance for those women to have a voice. This book still managed to revolve around the men in the story. The women didn't really have any autonomy, any drive, any effect on the plot or the story. The main woman is a war bride, but she doesn't even really have a personality. There's just nothing about her to really engage you with her. Then when we started seeing through Achilles' perspective, I didn't understand that because Achilles' story has been told many a times. Why are we focusing on him? But what really, really aggravated me, what officially made me realize this book was going to be in the 2-star category, was when the author basically said, obviously, the women aren't going to be the focus of the story because in all of the stories, the men are really the main focus. They're the ones who get all the attention. The women don't actually matter, except that's literally the book you sold me. That's the book I went in expecting. Don't tell me I'm dumb for expecting that when you market it that way. I realize obviously authors don't have like a ton of control when it comes to marketing and publishing. So annoyed. And I read this book in like February, so it's been 10 months and I'm still this ticked off. Another one that was right at the beginning of the year that's also very much aggravated me, The Shoddy Setup by Lily Vale. I read this one for my 5x5 second chance romance. First off, I could not stand the main character. She was very not like other girls. Then she's in a relationship with another man who is not the focus of this romance. So already was a little hesitant. There's a ton of emotional cheating going on. And she constantly is trying to showcase to the audience that, no, she's crazy about this guy. She's super in love with him. And it was so irritating when it's a romance book and I'm supposed to be focused on her getting with her childhood sweetheart, the hero of the story. Why is so much time dedicated to this other dude that clearly doesn't even really matter? Then the third act conflict, it was literally a repeat of what broke them up when they were teenagers, which is ridiculous because it had been like 7 years. You're adults. Just talk. It's not that hard. That one was a shame. But the next one hurt more because this book was actually a favorite of one of my best friends. Life's Too Short by 𝗖cie Ich𝗁𝗁. This is technically the third book in her Friend Zone series. I loved Part of Your World by 𝗖cie Ich𝗁𝗁. As I mentioned in my disappointments video, I was let down by yours truly. But I thought, maybe that's just a one-off. Let's try one of her other books. And I went with Life's Too Short since I had heard the most positive things about that one, and it in particular was my friend Kat's favorite. Except a lot of the issues I had with yours truly extended to this book, or I guess vice versa since this one came out first. Essentially, it boils down to, I don't like how 𝗖cie Ich𝗁𝗁 writes miscommunication. It is so aggravating. This is a friends to lovers relationship, and I actually really enjoyed seeing them become friends, seeing their feelings develop. But I was 75% into the book and they still weren't a couple. By that point, I was getting aggravated. When they finally are, there's all of these really serious topics that should be discussed, should be talked about in order for this to actually go somewhere, and they're just not. They're just constantly being ignored, which also just irritated me a ton. I've talked about before that if I am actively rolling my eyes, gagging, uncomfortable with PDA or romance scenes in a romance book, that's usually time to put it down. But in this case, I went ahead and skimmed through. I kept pushing. Found out that they don't get together until about 80% and there's still a third act conflict. I was done. I was officially done. I didn't want to read any more of it. I'm still annoyed about that because I loved Part of Your World. I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was so fun, so cute, so sweet. But she and I have since broken up, as I've talked about before, and it's a shame, but c'est la vie. Finally, this one, on one hand, I could use an excuse that I was listening to this audiobook when I got in a car accident. Naturally, I don't particularly feel positive about it, but really, I didn't feel positive about any of this book. Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. And I know I'm in fairly good company. This is a really divisive book. People either love it or hate it. It's dark academia, it's very gothic. For me, it just felt like the book didn't really go anywhere. There wasn't much of a plot. What plot there was didn't actually feel like it was resolved. The main character was just, she went back and forth between being like the best student and lazing around, doing nothing, never going to class, drinking and hanging out with her friends on repeat. I had a very hard time connecting with her or really liking her. The one aspect of the story I did enjoy was her relationship with her roommate baby, but that dissolves fairly quickly. In the end, I finished this book and I was like, nothing happened. Literally nothing happened. But again, I also finished this book when I got in a car accident. That basically explains why this was my worst book of the year. Now, for my best books of the year. Technically, this is ranked. However, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the rank. I didn't think about it super hard because it's super hard for me to rank favorite books, okay? And there were a lot of really good contenders this year. I think all of these were also 5 stars. So, you know, it's really hard to compare 5 stars and 5 stars. Starting out though, Harold the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, the second book in the Locked Tomb series. The reason I would say this one is my favorite of the series so far is because this does a lot of the things Gideon does in making you confused and exploring the world, but there's so much more exploration, so many more religious themes tied in. The magic in this, the way Harrow is written as an unreliable narrator, and also the amount of things Muir does in this book to confuse you but also give you answers is so freaking clever. I cannot get over how she utilizes even the writing style to make you unsettled and unsure of what's actually happening, but also give you little clues and point you in the right direction. It's so smart. I'm still in awe of this book. I am also heartbroken that a lot of my annotations were lost because originally I was reading this on a digital copy from my library and making annotations, and when I went to transfer them, so many had disappeared, and it still hurts me. I had a phenomenal time annotating this because so much of it is just, what? Huh? oh, Harrow, honey, just go to sleep, babe. I will say my favorite character of the series actually isn't in this one, but I didn't even mind it too much because I actually came to care about Harrow immensely, which I'm still shocked by because when we first meet her in Gideon, hated her, didn't think I could ever enjoy her. But she is so well nuanced, she has so much depth, there are so many layers to her, and the exploration of them in this, phenomenal. I also kind of love God, I'll just leave it at that. Weird, but at time, the religious themes and how Muir utilizes those throughout the series, so clever. We'll never get over the writing of this series. It's so freaking good. Next up, on a pretty different note, Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. This one I picked up because I had heard positive things about the author. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. The way body positivity is talked about, eating disorders, toxic positivity in general, health and wellness versus beauty standards, all of that stuff handled fantastically, but also just the super sweet, cute romance that develops. It goes from strangers to super close friends to lovers, and then there's this underlying tension because really they shouldn't be together, given the fact that she's reviewing the app he owns and he is also technically her trainer. So there's a lot of lines being crossed there, but the way the relationship unfolds in this had me so freaking hooked. I loved it. It was so good. Again, the body image discussions taking place in this and like how he responds to these things when he sees them in the main character. So cute. So good. I loved it. I can't wait to read more from Denise Williams. Just recently picked up Fastest Way to Fall. Nope. I just recently picked up How to Fail at Flirting. A lot of F's in her titles. And I can't wait to read that one. Then, unfortunately, the only one I don't currently own, and that is Heartbreaking, Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly. This one I had an arc of, and I read it earlier this year. Adored it. So freaking cute, so sweet. Well-developed characters trying to find themselves while also getting closer to the romantic interest in a romance book is like my absolute fave. The characters working on their own shit, but also coming together and improving for the other person and trying to grow on their own, but also growing as a couple. So good. Atmosphere work in this also is fantastic because it is set as the two main characters are hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. This book made me want to go hiking. Not on the Pacific Crest Trail because that'd be a lot. The main character, 𝗖cie, was a little sweetheart that I just wanted to wrap up and hug. There were some serious elements in both of their backgrounds that were also being explored. Just across the board, I loved this one. I am so intrigued to read the newest book by Anita Kelly, How to Get the Girl, which is a sapphic romance. And I also have an arc of it and I can't wait to pick it up next year, guys. I'm so excited. I also can't wait to get this book. I need it in my hands. Then we're gonna make our way back to fantasy with Black Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse. Technically, this is kind of cheating because this was the first book I marked as read for the year, but really I finished it like in December of 2022. I didn't have to tell you that, but I did. See how honest I am? This is a fantasy book which is based on pre-Columbian American civilizations, and there are these clans that technically aren't warring, but something is percolating as they're nearing an incoming eclipse. We have three main characters. We have Nara, the Sun Priest, who is the head of many of these clans. But on the opposite side, we have Serapio, who is a member of minorities that has already experienced much tragedy. He has been destined for something that we're not quite sure what that is. It's freaking wild. His powers are so cool. I'm still absolutely in awe of how those have been written and I cannot wait to see more. But then we also have our Teak character who is very reminiscent to a siren, and she is also a pirate captain, a bisexual disaster. I love her, Giala, and I think the next book is going to be focusing on her the most, and I cannot wait. There's a ton of political intrigue in this. All these moving parts that you're never quite sure who's working for who's actually going for the best outcome, who is good, who is evil. This was a fantastic ride. I really, really enjoyed it. The second book did have a bit of middle book syndrome, but I cannot wait to get my hands on the third, and the cover has been announced and she is stunning. Continuing on with the fantasy streak, A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, which I picked this up because it was sold to me as Roy and Risa from Full Metal Alchemist fanfiction, and it was very hard not to transfer my love of those two characters in that ship onto this book, but also a perfect description for this book. Once again, there are two main characters who are so well nuanced, so well layered, and they do not like each other at the start of this. Don't really want to have to work together, but they don't really get a choice. And the way they come to care about one another is just so sweet. It's slow moving, but it's so natural and feels really authentic. The alchemical power system in this was also super cool, something I hadn't read in another book previously. And then, of course, because it's me, I adored the religious themes that were taking place. Definitely fantastical versions of Catholics, Protestants, Judaism, and the way all three of those interact within the story. I'm still in awe of this one. I think back on it quite often. This was kind of my Wolf and the Woodsman for the year, where initially I was really thinking about putting this at like a 4-star, and then that became a 4.5, and then it became a 5-star. On a quite different note, Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This technically is sold as a horror book. I'm sure plenty of people have arguments against that. I agree with you, I do. But I freaking ate this book up for the historical romance that it is. And I think I figured out that I don't mind historical romance if there is something to change the genre slightly. If there's like a mystery aspect, if there's fantasy elements, or in this case, if there's some horror that's going on. The childhood friends to lovers, but also the forbidden relationship. Then there's forced proximity. Oh my God. The depth of their relationship that you can understand in the little things that happen between these two. For example, the way Nena will talk to Nestor, and the fact that she couldn't get away with that with any other man. Any other man would not allow it in this time period, but he does. And oh, it's so good. It's so good. The longing and the pining is just beautiful. I loved seeing Nena's character grow throughout this, but also in the development of the relationship. Nestor's trying to make things better, but also like doesn't know how to because of the circumstances. This book was so freaking good. It was so good. Another one that I am continuously thinking back on. Then we have Honey and Spice by Balu Babalola, which is a modern day romance, but is set at a university. And the shocking part, which I talked about in my surprises, is that this is fake dating, and I freaking loved it. I actually had no qualms with how the fake dating element was handled throughout the story. In fact, it felt like it wasn't really that important to the characters because they grow together as friends, and then slowly that develops into actual feelings. Another romance here that just felt so authentic and genuine. I will never get over Malachi geeking out because he read Kiki's favorite fantasy series. Still so stinking cute. The growth that we see in Kiki as a main character, the way she finally opens up to people and starts to allow herself to have friends again, to form a group once more, a little bit of spice. Anytime Kiki and Malachi were on page together, I was glued. I could not look away. I loved every single interaction. There's so much banter, but they're also just so clever in how they talk to each other. I highly recommend all of these, but also this one. Next up is one that I am sure many other people will have this on their top books of the year, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Yeah, I'm gonna be right along with everybody. Loved this. Another one that showcases the fact that I don't mind historical romance if there's something else there because of the fantasy. But really, the thing that sets this book apart from all of the others for me is the writing between these two in their letters. It is so raw, it is so honest, it is so beautiful. It was literally something that constantly had me desperate for them to come together, to acknowledge the feelings they had. I think I tabbed probably every single letter that is written because they're all just stunning. They showcase the emotion and the growth of their emotions throughout this phenomenally. I am in awe of Rebecca Ross's writing here. Cannot wait. I cannot wait for next year when I can read Ruthless Vows. I want that book in my hands so badly. I know I'm not alone with this one. Everybody else is going to be talking about it too because it's just so good. Then I have What If You and Me by Ronnie Lauren. Now, for this one, the reason I absolutely adore Ronnie Lawrence romances is because of the character work and the growth you see the characters in particular go through, healing that they go through, particularly Andy in this one. I mean, Hill definitely goes through a healing journey as well, but Andy's ability to finally open up and trust people was just gorgeous. I loved that. This is another one where they start out as friends and then there's a bit of a friends with benefits and then they're officially lovers, and it was just delicious the entire time. The development of their relationship felt so true to both of their personalities. It felt like their relationship was growing as both of them did, and I really enjoyed that. Lauren's writing is also just so funny and so sweet. It's unsurprising that this one was on this list because Yes and I Love You was on my best books last year. I just highly recommend the series overall. And these books are not talked about enough. I freaking love them. And then finally, the last one, which honestly, this kind of feels like cheating to be my best book of the year because it's such a different rating system compared to these, and that's because it's nonfiction. Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. Had a phenomenal time reading this book because it is everything I love about Greek mythology brought together with fantastic commentary that hits on all of the feminist notes I love to discuss in literature. Then there's Natalie Haynes's dry commentary and also some pop culture references that are talked about throughout as well, connecting to these myths. And like, it's very hard for me to not say this is my favorite book of the year because this is nonfiction and these are fiction, and the rating scale I have for them are not the same. They're very different, but I loved this book. I really did. It was so good. Everything I love wrapped up together in this one, and I cannot wait to get my hands on Divine Might, which is Natalie Haynes doing the same thing, but with the Greek goddesses. So excited. So excited. This was so educational, but also really entertaining. And again, if you enjoy Greek mythology, if you like feminist discussions going on in literature, pick this up because it'll hit all of those notes for you. They all come together so well. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. All right, y'all. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you. Bye.